Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A top military commander in Ukraine is pleading with the international community to pressure Russia into allowing the evacuation of more civilians. The Alberta government says it will make it easier to access a COVID-19 pill to help treat the virus. And a big golf tournament is coming up in support of the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation. We have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A Ukrainian officer who's leading the defense of Mariupol is urging the global community to pressure Russia to allow the evacuation of civilians and wounded soldiers holed up at a steel mill. Captain Palomar, deputy commander of Ukraine's Azov regiment, urged Ukrainian President Zelensky to help ensure the evacuation of people still seeking refuge in underground bunkers. Addressing the world community, Palomar denounced the Russians for refusing to observe any ethical norms and destroying people before the eyes of the world. Now, according to separatist forces, one person was killed and two others were wounded when Ukrainian forces allegedly shelled an oil depot in the city of Makivka. 4 5,000-ton oil tanks caught fire after the attack. Firefighters and other emergency crews worked desperately to try and put out the blazes. A Russian cruise missile attack has targeted electrical substations in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. The recent assault came after air raid sirens sounded throughout the city.
Зараз триває ліквідація наслідків ракетного удару по місту Львову. Удари були завдані по підстанціях, 3 підстанції. У зв'язку з тим є перебої з електропостачанням. 2 людей отримали поранення, їм надається медична допомога. Також є серйозні пошкодження в комунальній інфраструктурі, повилітали вікна, фактично пошкоджено 60 гаражів. Є перебої з подачею водопостачання, також перебої з електропостачанням наших певних медичних закладів. Працюють всі служби.
Now, closer to home, applause filled the room on Wednesday as students from Bethlehem Catholic High School in Saskatoon raised signs revealing that $250,000 had been raised for Ukraine through a fundraising luncheon. The money will help Saskatoon's sister city in Ukraine. Around 400 business owners and community members attended the event. And organizers say the funds will mainly go towards medical supplies such as bandages. There's been a spike in eating disorders with Canada's youth during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, that's according to a study by the Canadian Institute for Health. Health officials say girls aged 10 to 17 with eating disorders were hospitalized nearly 60% more following the onset of COVID-19. They say the number of hospitalizations is just the tip of the iceberg because so many patients do not have access to care. Canada's Transport Minister, Omar Alghabra, says he's working with the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority to find solutions to the long delays at security at our country's major airports. Alghabra says there is a labor shortage, and he's asked if there are ways to streamline the system to reduce delays until more staff can be hired and trained.
Look, that's the situation in the line of security at airports is a concern of mine. I'm really concerned about the frustrations that Canadians and travelers are feeling. So we've been working with CATSA and airports and airlines over the last few weeks to figure out what can we do other than adding resources. Can we streamline certain processes? Can we cut some challenges or obstacles that could help us expedite this? I'm out of breath, sorry. But we're working on it.
A committee in the House of Commons says the Trudeau Liberals must tell Canadians if it is collecting data about their movements with the opportunity to opt out of that collection. The Ethics Committee began looking into the issue back in January following public outcry about the Federal Health Agency's secret collection of data from cell phone providers during the pandemic. Now, there are reports that the Public Health Agency used information from cell towers to track 33 million mobile devices to assess population mobility patterns during the lockdowns. It then issued a tender in December to continue tracking location data until May 31st of next year. Ontario's election campaign began with party leaders promising to either build or cancel a planned highway that would cut through and serve key battleground areas. The proposed Highway 413 is set to serve the Greater Toronto Area, a region holding several seats that the parties consider to be in play.
Folks, once this gets built, once we build Highway 413, just think of this. It will save 30 minutes per trip for a commuter, and that's an hour of your day returned to you. That's 5 hours per week out of gridlock and in your home with your loved ones. Highway 413 is part of our province-wide plan to build new roads, highways, and transit for all of Ontario.
The 413 is the wrong project. The 413 is a highway that paves over wetlands, that is going to be bad for the environment, and is really, its purpose is to help Doug Ford's developer buddies, and everybody knows it.
The flooding continues in many parts of Manitoba, including hundreds of homes that have been completely destroyed on the Peguis Nation. BCN's Lorraine Stewart is in Manitoba and has the latest for us.
As the water began to rise, flood officials quickly sprung into action, closing off several dikes surrounding communities, closing roads like this one, and sandbagging around homes. The fight is on to save as many homes as possible, but some have already been lost. It looks like a lake, but under this water hides farm fields and the main highway into St. Adolphe. After substantial snowfall this winter and a record rainstorm in the spring, the Red River spilled its banks and is now threatening homes in its path. Kevin Nodge was evacuated earlier this week. He's come back to see his property. So how deep would you say, again, is your driveway, the water here on your driveway?
About 1.5 to 3 feet in spots. So you got to be careful.
25 Manitoba municipalities have declared local states of emergencies, not including several First Nations. Peguis First Nation, north of Winnipeg, has over 700 homes damaged by floodwaters, 200 completely surrounded.
Here's the voluntary evacuation order, hand-delivered and personally signed by the mayor. It's like, okay, never had one of these before, so...
While efforts are being made to save their homes south of Winnipeg, they're more prepared after the historic flood of 1997. While they've been here before, floodwaters are unpredictable. They're not taking any chances.
It's been climbing up just little increments.
The crest is expected to arrive within the next few days, but so is more rain, which is the last thing residents here need. Reporting for Bridge City News, I'm Lorraine Stewart, outside St. Adolphe, Manitoba.
Wow, so much water and so much flooding. But here, it's been so dry in southwestern Alberta. Well, we saw some spotty showers in some regions, which has been nice for our farmers and ranchers, but so much more moisture is needed. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, is there even a chance of more showers developing?
Well, it looks like we could see some more moisture develop overnight, actually, Hal, which I'm sure our farmer friends are going to like. They sure need it anyways. Windy conditions as well. I know I've seen that Chinook arch develop over the past couple of days here in Lethbridge. Looks like our winds this evening are going to be 30 to 50 kilometer per hour, gusting at times up to 80K. So windy conditions definitely into Friday. We're looking at sunny, dry, a high of 16 degrees. When will it rain again? That's the big question. Well, I'll tell you coming up later on in the newscast.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The Alberta government says it is going to make it easier for eligible people to receive a pill to treat the COVID-19 virus. The province says it will allow doctors to prescribe Paxlovid instead of requiring people to get the drug just through Alberta Health Services. Those who are eligible include unvaccinated people over the age of 55, unvaccinated Indigenous people over 45, adults with some pre-existing health conditions, and pregnant women. Health Minister Jason Copping says while Paxlovid can help, it's not a replacement for vaccination. A judge found a Lethbridge man accused of drugging 3 women and sexually assaulting them guilty. The provincial court found Sohail Bindra guilty of administering a drug to the women so he could assault them. Now, the judge, Jerry Legrandier, said the women's testimony during the trial was credible, while Bindra's was not. The 35-year-old Bindra allegedly sexually assaulted the 3 women between 2018 and 2020. The accused denied the allegations and said that all of the women consented to the liaisons. Bindra is scheduled to face 2 other sex assault trials later this year, and the first trial is set for June 20th to the 24th. A 32-year-old Lethbridge man is in hospital with serious injuries following a 2-vehicle collision on Wednesday afternoon. Lethbridge police say a motorcycle was traveling eastbound on Gary Drive before it hit the southwest median and jumped into the intersection, where it was then hit by a pickup truck. The motorcycle rider was transported to hospital while the occupants of the truck were unhurt. Police are still investigating the collision. In Lethbridge, there is a continuing issue with doctor shortages. Now, there's only one clinic in Lethbridge where doctors are accepting new patients, which is the Prairie Treatment Opioid Dependency Clinic. Patients are now going to the emergency department in our city seeking a doctor. Recently, 3 doctors have signed letters of recruitment and 7 are pending in our city as sponsored doctors that should be starting sometime in the fall. Dr. Paul Parks, an emergency physician with the Medicinet Regional Hospital, presented at SACP on Thursday and said this is also an issue where he practices and the government needs to be held accountable.
It baffles my mind that the government and the Minister of Health and the Premier aren't held to come down to Lethbridge and come see what actually it looks like when there are no family doctors. We will be the first to say we can't do primary care and preventative care in the emergency departments, and we desperately need that component, and we need Albertans to fight for it. We need the communities to engage and advocate for it, because that's ultimately what the government's job is.
In Lethbridge, approximately 40,000 people are still without a family physician. Golfers will be taking a swing for charity coming up on August the 10th. The Val Mattioti Italian Open will be teeing off at the Lethbridge Golf and Country Club, with all proceeds going toward the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation and the radiology department within the hospital to provide equipment and services. The executive director of the foundation says the fundraiser is coming back for the first time since 2019.
Really kind of hit home for us, where there have been a lot of questions even since January. When is the Italian Open? Is the Italian Open going to happen this year? We're like, you know what? It is our hope. Please give us some time, etc. And really, the decision hadn't been made to host the Open until last month. So with an event like this, we're really excited to be holding it because it creates and begins that sense of normalcy, right? Whatever the normal is, or pre-pandemic or pandemic normal is, and reacquaint with people that they haven't seen in a while, and really recreating the sense of community in a face-to-face, in-person environment. So we're very excited to be holding this year.
To date, the event has raised over $1.6 million for the foundation. Could Canada be the next country to land on the moon? Dr. David Naylor from the University of Lethbridge seems to think so. The university has received a $100,000 grant from the Canadian Space Agency, along with 22 other post-secondaries across the country. Dr. Naylor says it's really all about investing in the students.
We've been given funding from different grants for equipment. We have 4 industrial partners that are contributing upwards of $2 million. And this piece of the puzzle is for training of students. So these students will be high school students, possibly. We have had some in the past, undergraduate students, graduate students, and so forth. So we're training the next generation of bright minds on the technology that will be required to tackle the problems that will be coming down the pipes in the coming years.
Dr. Naylor will have more on the work they're doing at the U of L in an interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Well, it's not very often you'd be nominated for an award at the start of your career, but 2 Southern Alberta teachers have. It's called the Edwin Parr Award, and it was established close to 60 years ago, and it recognizes outstanding first-year teachers.
When I first got the news, I was honestly speechless. I wasn't expecting that news to come my way. It's been great to be recognized as a first-year teacher who is pouring their heart and soul into their job, and also being able to be recognized for all my hard work that I do put in.
Principal Mitchell Van Dyke nominated me. He came in and told me, I think I'm going to nominate you for the Edwin Parr Award because I really feel like you're doing an excellent job. And yeah, I was a little bit overwhelmed. So.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. The Edwin Parr Awards are set for May 18th at the Heritage Inn in Taber. Well, the annual Jane's Walk is back and will be making its way through Lethbridge this weekend. The walk, which has been taking place in our city for the past 9 years, is a free walking tour for pedestrians to learn more about neighborhoods and hear different stories about the city. An organizer for the event explains the importance of this walk.
These stories could be because they've heard from family members or friends that have been passed down through many generations, or because people have done the research about a building. And one of the interesting things that happen is people begin sharing. So perhaps one person will have one side of the story about a building, and another person on a walk will have another perspective on it. And it's not just about one person sharing, it's about the story we can all bring to the table with our different experiences.
Now, if you're interested in participating in the walk, more details can be found on our website, bridgecitynews.ca. The beautiful Nikki-Yuko Japanese Garden is up for a very special award. The organization is a finalist for the 2022 Alberta Business Awards of Distinction in the Community Attraction category. Now, the executive director of the garden, Michelle Day, says this nomination is important in furthering tourism here in our community.
Even though people are coming here to learn, to experience some amazing experiences, such as our karaoke or sumo, weddings, understanding the history, they're leaving learning something, and they're holding that. And I think because we have such a unique story to Canada, it's really an honor that people are recognizing that.
The Alberta Business Awards of Distinction will be announced on June 24th at the Renaissance Edmonton Airport Hotel. Neuron Mobility, a new e-scooter service in Lethbridge, is expanding its reach, and now users will be able to scoot to the north side of the city. The expansion began on Wednesday, and the scooters and e-bikes can reach as far as Legacy Ridge, Hardyville, Uplands, and parts of Anderson and Churchill Parks. An official with Neuron explains why North Lethbridge wasn't included in the original plan.
This is a decision that we took with the city from the beginning. Just, when you launch in a new area, it's very hard to cover the entire city. So we thought that just, we would start here with the goal to always push to get into the north as quickly as we could. The ridership has been fantastic so far since we've started. It's far surpassed our expectations, and so I think it's just a testament to how well it's been received in the city that we were able to do this within less than a month of launching.
Yeah, the program launched on April the 8th, and since then, thousands of people have ridden over 40,000 kilometers throughout the city. Cinco de Mayo, or the 5th of May, is a holiday that celebrates the date of the Mexican Army's victory over France in the Battle of Puebla during the Franco-Mexican War. So what does the holiday mean for those of us riding here in southern Alberta? Well, the owner of Salsa's, a local Mexican diner, which celebrated its grand opening, has that answer.
Here in Lethbridge, though, we adopted the Cinco de Mayo not too long ago. Actually, we've been promoting the Cinco de Mayo for the past few years in behalf of the Latin American here in Lethbridge that likes to promote our culture, and that I think it's another way to promote it and to get together and celebrate what a Cinco de Mayo or La Batalla de Puebla means. To the Southern Alberta community, it means another way of interacting, being inclusive, and share our culture here in Southern Alberta.
From Cinco de Mayo to another special occasion which is coming up this weekend, it is Mother's Day weekend. And some local businesses are seeing an increase in clients getting last-minute gifts. Cindy Haug, the owner of Marquis Flowers in Lethbridge, says it takes months of preparation and lots of work to get ready for Mom's big day.
It's a lengthy process. Starting for Mother's Day, we're generally starting shortly after Valentine's Day, early March, where we have to have our pre-bookings for our flowers into our wholesale suppliers so they can go to auction and get what their customers need. Generally, with Mother's Day, it is our busiest event of the year. It tops out Valentine's Day as well as Christmas. And our customers, I would say the week before Mother's Day is pretty hectic for the whole week with our customers.
And just a reminder that Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday. As we celebrate our mothers this weekend, it's also very important to appreciate the relationships that parents have with their kids. Amy Reno is with the Visionary Family Ministry and author of the book, The Not So Perfect Mom. She says sometimes moms have a certain amount of guilt trying to have a special heart connection with their kids.
I think it's so easy as moms to get caught up in almost like a mindset. Again, another chapter of my book is that like we're creating products instead of people. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that we have to create these super kids that are going to excel at something and get the scholarship and, have all these badges. And somehow that defines us as being great moms, when in reality, I don't think that's what any of us really want. We want our kids to be happy, and we want a lifelong relationship with them, a heart-connected relationship.
Author Amy Reno and BCN's Jeanette Rocher will have more on mom's special relationship with her kids coming up in the second half of our program. Well, it was a very warm day in this city, and the mercury, however, will be dropping over the next few days. And if you're praying for moisture, some may be on the way this weekend. Complete weather details are coming up. It is so nice that the days are getting longer. That way, if you get home late from work and you want to have a barbecue at maybe 8 or 8:30, it's still a little bit light outside. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a full look at our weather forecast. Jeanette, the days are getting longer and the temperature may also be getting a little bit cooler with the potential of rain on the way.
True, Hal. Yeah, our days are stretching pretty close to 15 hours long, which I'm loving, by the way. As for moisture, yes, we could be seeing a 30% chance of showers overnight, which I'm sure our farmer friends are going to like. They definitely need more. Besides this evening, we're looking at not until Sunday, Mother's Day, that we could be seeing the potential of more rain. Into tomorrow, Friday, we're looking at sunny, dry conditions, 16 degrees. Going to cool down a little bit more for Saturday, a mix of sun and cloud, and then cool down even more so on Sunday to 10 degrees, and that's when we're going to see that rain. On Monday, 12 degrees the high, 14 the high for both Tuesday and Wednesday. So definitely today, Thursday, the hot one at 24 degrees. 17 is our average high for this time of year. 3 degrees is the average low. 30, that's where we were at back in 1992. And in 1967, Lethbridge had a record low of -6. That is very cold for this time of year. 6:02 was our sunrise this morning, and 8:54 p.m. It will be our evening sunset, giving us 3 minutes longer of daylight today than we had yesterday. So close to getting very close to 15 hours of daylight. Victoria looking at 40% chance of showers tomorrow, 11 degrees the high, 30% chance of rain in Vancouver tomorrow, 12 degrees the high. Edmonton looking at showers and a risk of a thunderstorm in the afternoon, 14 the high there, and a lovely 17-degree high. And Calgary tomorrow with partly cloudy skies and winds gusting 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Now, Saskatoon also looking at a possibility of some showers, 22 degrees the high. Risk of a thunderstorm in Regina tomorrow with some showers, 19 the high there. A lovely 20-degree day in Winnipeg with lots of sunshine, so get your sunglasses. Going to see 30 to 50K winds there, though, so a little breezy. Same thing for Toronto, looking at 30 to 50K winds. Sunshine, 14 degrees, 17 the high in Ottawa with a mix of sun and cloud, partly cloudy skies. Also expected tomorrow in Montreal with a high of 15 degrees. As we look to the East Coast now, sunny skies in Fredericton and Halifax, looking at 11 degrees the high in those cities, 7 degrees only in Charlottetown with partly cloudy skies. Chance of rain in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of only 4 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Alberta's largest credit union is laying off staff. Service Credit Union did not immediately say how many employees would be affected by the job cuts. The company made the announcement in a video posted on YouTube. In a quarterly update last month, the company reported net income of $28.6 million for the first quarter of the 2022 fiscal year. That is up 17.9% from the same period last year. Loblaw Company says people are shopping for groceries more often, but buying less and shifting their focus to discount stores. Canada's biggest food retailer noted the trends as it reported its first quarter profit was up nearly 40% from a year ago to $437 million. Revenue for the quarter increased from $11.87 to $12.26 billion as food same-store sales rose 2.1%, while drug retail same-store sales grew 5.2%. Loblaw also announced it is raising its quarterly dividend to 40.5 cents per share. That is up from 36.5 cents. OPEC and other oil-producing nations are standing by their plan to gradually increase the amount of crude they send to the world. The decision on Thursday came as Europe's proposed phase-out of Russian oil threatens to take millions of barrels off of a global market already thirsty for crude. OPEC Plus, which includes Russia, agreed to add 432,000 barrels per day in June. The cautious approach will exacerbate a global energy crunch and is expected to push prices up further for oil, gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 488 points on the day to finish at 20,696. The Dow was down 1,063 points to 32,997. The S&P 500 was down 153 on the day to 4146. and the Nasdaq was down 647 points to 12,317. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 45 cents to 108.26 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 37 cents to 8.78 US. Gold was even on the day at 18.77.18 US an ounce, and silver was up a cent to 22.52 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $14.56 per bushel, barley's at $10.21, canola's at $25.92, and corn is at $12.24 per bushel. Live cattle were down $1.05 to $133.78. Feeder cattle were down $1.93 to $160.33, and lean hogs were up $1.98 to $107.08. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 77.90 US. Recapping one of our top stories, there's been a spike in eating disorders with Canada's youth during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that's according to a study by the Canadian Institute for Health. Health officials say girls aged 10 to 17 with eating disorders were hospitalized nearly 60% more following the onset of COVID-19. They say the number of hospitalizations is just the tip of the iceberg because so many patients do not have access to care. The University of Lethbridge is playing a part in space exploration. BCN's Jeanette Roche has details next in a special interview with astronomy and physics professor Dr. David Naylor.
Well, the University of Lethbridge has received a $100,000 grant from the Canadian Space Agency to train the next generation of space scientists. The U of L is one of 21 post-secondary institutions in the country to receive a grant through the CSA's Flights and Fieldwork for the Advancement of Science and Technology Funding Initiative. It's a mouthful, but joining me now to discuss this is Dr. David Naylor. He is the physics and astronomy professor and the head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at the University of Lethbridge. Dr. Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. So, Dr. Naylor, this is big, exciting news for the university and for Canada, I would say, but I'm going to let you explain what this grant is for exactly because it's kind of a mouthful. So, in a nutshell, it's to train the next generation of space scientists in the development of what? A cryogenic something?
Yes. So, most of your viewers may know that Canada is going to be going to the moon on a project called the Lunar Gateway. And the Canadian Space Agency has joined forces with NASA to on this project that will see a Canadian be the second nation on the boots on the ground on the moon. So someone in school today will be a Canadian who will have be only the second nation to step foot on the moon, which is really exciting. And so the Canadian Space Agency funds development in technology so that you mitigate the risk. So things that space is risk. That's all it is as a, and you have to mitigate that. And you need to train the next generation of students who become scientists in the technology that will be needed for the future generations. So that's what this is all about. And we're particularly targeting technology that has a path to the moon and some other experiments that we're dealing with as well.
That's incredible news. It's very exciting. And so what will this grant money do exactly? What will the U of L do with it?
So when you do research, there are two things you look at. One is getting the equipment, the infrastructure, the hardware. And the second is the money to train students. And so we've been given funding from different grants for equipment. We have 4 industrial partners that are contributing upwards of $2 million. And this piece of the puzzle is for training of students. So these students will be high school students, possibly. We have had some in the past, undergraduate students, graduate students, and so forth. So we're training the next generation of bright minds on the technology that will be required to tackle the problems that will be coming down the pipes in the coming years.
That's amazing. So maybe paint a picture for me. So what will the students and researchers be able to do because of this grant and this program?
So So most people don't realize that the moon in some ways is actually harder than Mars as an environment. Mars is really about a temperature of minus 50 degrees, minus 60 degrees Celsius. So Antarctica is actually colder than Mars, but the moon gets significantly colder around 200 Celsius, minus 200 Celsius. And that is because of its orbit, and it's sheltered. The night on the moon is 14 Earth days. So it means that surviving lunar night is a real challenge, and you have to have instrumentation that's checked out to do that. And we have the largest cryogenic test facility, which is kind of like an enormous beer fridge. I mean, it gets much colder, much faster, but it cools to temperatures that nowhere else can be achieved really for the volume that we have. So we can in principle cool a small rover, a medium rover, and a nano rover in our cryogenic facilities. So students will be exposed to the technology that is associated with this kind of work. Basically, when you put things, if you get a glass of pop and put an ice cube in it, it cracks, it shatters. That thermal gradient just causes the ice cube to crack when you have a pop from the fridge. And pretty much everything you cool to these temperatures breaks. The optical, thermal, electrical, mechanical properties, everything, the properties of everything just fail as you get to extremely low temperatures. And so you must be able to design systems that will survive extreme cooling. And that's what we're doing.
Interesting.
The CSA calls it the Flights and Fieldwork for Space Technology, but the acronym is FAST. It's a very nice acronym. It's basically you have to simulate a space environment. And we're one of the few labs in Canada that can really do that.
That's amazing. I was getting freezing just hearing you describe what the moon feels like, that minus 200 degrees. 14 night, well, I guess one night is equivalent to 14 days. That is unbelievable. So this project must simulate a realistic space environment. So what does that look like in terms of what the students will be doing in the lab at the U of L? Can you maybe give us some examples?
It looks like a big metal tank. You can imagine it as a submarine. When you go in a submarine, it takes some time to get down to the bottom of the ocean, and you can stay there for a long time. But you must be careful when you ascend. You can't come up too quickly, or you will get the bends. And it's similar in the sense that when you cool down, like the ice cube in the glass of pop, if you cool down too quickly, the ice cube will shatter. And so we have got to go down to extremely low temperatures. And we can stay there pretty much indefinitely, which is just surprising. And we can get 10 times colder than anywhere in the universe can be. With our cryostat, we can actually get down to 0.3 Kelvin. So it takes a long time to get down there, but then we can stay there. And our record is almost a couple of months staying at that low temperature. And the problem, like a submarine, if you forget to take your toothpaste, then you're stuck because you've got to wait till you come up. So when we cool things, we've got to be absolutely sure that we have everything in the cryostat that we will need as we go down. So it's meticulous work, it's careful work, and we're pretty good at what we do here. So we're training the next generation of students in this technology.
Okay, so Dr. Naylor, is this cryogenic tank actually physically at the University of Lethbridge then, or is it off-site somewhere?
No. It's on the top level of the new science building. So we have to be on the top level because we need a lot of compressors to cool it. So they're in the penthouse, and so we're on level 9 in the science building, and it was designed fit for purpose. So this is the first time we've had a lab that's been equipped specifically for this task.
That's absolutely incredible. So this new type of spectrometer has been identified by the world's leading space agencies like NASA, right, as a necessary step to explore the galaxy. Can you explain why?
It gets tricky pretty quickly, but we now know the. So when you explore the universe, you look at different wavelengths, different colors. So with your eye, you can see the planets out there tonight. But it turns out that most of the energy emitted by the universe is detected in the infrared. That's beyond the limit of human vision. And so you need certain types of detectors and certain types of instrumentation. And the physics is complex, but it boils down to the fact that you have to cool your detectors to extremely low temperatures to work. And then you've got competing contrasting requirements. You would like to cover a full spectral band, a broad spectral band. So if you were thinking about the rainbow of colors, you've got green through to yellow through to red, you've got the whole rainbow. And at the same time, you might want to know, well, is it, lemon yellow, or is it a bolder yellow within the color range? And so the task is to cover a broad spectral range at very high spectral resolution. And that's a challenge. And so the space agencies have realized that this hybrid technology is going to be required. And NASA has identified this. The European Space Agency, with whom we do a lot of work as well, they know that this is the route to go. And so it's on the technology gap. Every year, NASA publishes a technology gap review. Where are we missing in technology? And then the world scientists like ourselves try to fill in those gaps as best we can. So, yeah, I think we know Einstein said the smartest person is the one who poses the right question, not whether you can answer it. The right question is that we need this type of instrument, and now we're trying to develop the instrument, which is well on the path, and we need to train the next generation of students in how to use it, really.
Okay, so we've pretty much determined that this is an important step in the future of space exploration. So could something like this reduce future mission risk and cost then?
Well, yes. I mean, space is all about risk. I mean, you don't get into this game if you're risk averse. So you have to make sure you've got redundancy, full redundancy. So whenever we launch anything, you make sure that there are ways that you can reprogram it. You basically carry two of everything: two lasers, two detectors, two drives, two whatever it is. You have redundancy, and then you also have a redundancy in your hardware, your firmware, and so you can reprogram and reconfigure the spacecraft should there be problems. And so what you don't want to do, and I've been involved in space for 4 decades. I worked at the European Space Agency. What you don't want to do is to launch something and then find out, oh, it doesn't work, and here's why. And we've been in those positions. And so you do as much testing, soaking as you can, and you try. And now the requirement is you must test in a realistic space condition. And that's the new space driver, that you must be able to show that you can evaluate the performance of your instrument in the conditions that it's going to experience once it gets out there. And that is what we do. So we've got one of the most realistic space simulators in Canada because of the low temperature side. Many people can generate a high vacuum, but we have high vacuum and extremely low temperatures. And that's precisely what is going to be needed to reduce the risk. So we need to identify problems on the ground where we have a chance of fixing them and redesigning them before we launch a $10 billion thing, and then we find out, oh yeah, we should have thought about that.
So Dr. Naylor, has the University of Lethbridge taken part in any such study or project before? Like, maybe you can explain in what ways the U of L has shaped space exploration in the past, or is this a first for the university?
The University of Lethbridge, our group's been funded by the Canadian Space Agency for almost 20 years. We've been funded by ESA as well, and also NASA, actually. We have an instrument that flew on a U-2 aircraft, Earth ER-2 aircraft. So we're pretty old hands at this. And we built up the technology over, as I say, over several decades to become really the leading cryogenic space facility in Canada.
That's amazing. Has Canada had much involvement in influencing space exploration?
That's yes and no. We're a small country, really, and so the tax base is small. So our space agency does not get the kind of funding that NASA does, for sure. Europe, the countries in Europe joined together to form the European Space Agency, and you have, I forget the number, but it's probably 15 countries, maybe more, and they each chip in, and then they do big things. Japan does it on its own. Russia did it on its own. China does it on its own. So Canada can't do it on its own. We just don't have the resources to do it. But there are a lot of really talented scientists and engineers in Canada. And what happens is that NASA and ESA invite us to join their teams. So Canada gets involved in space because of the expertise and excellence that exists in the professors in universities across Canada. And it's interesting because we have ties with Europe and America, we actually get involved with both agencies. I've worked with NASA and with ESA, and sometimes NASA and ESA don't work well together, but we're in a kind of a neat position that we can join forces with both, and we get invited to. So we've been invited to participate in a mission that is being considered by NASA.
That is extremely, extremely cool. How much time do you think it will be before a Canadian steps foot on the moon?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Canada joined into the Lunar Gateway project, so Prime Minister Trudeau committed $2 billion to that effort, and in return for supporting that work, Canada gets a flight to the moon for a Canadian. So the second nationality to step foot on the moon will not be Russian or Chinese. Well, I mean, perhaps it could be, but it is going to be a Canadian after Americans, which is really kind of exciting. We don't actually know yet. The Artemis project is going to go back, and they're thinking probably 2025. And when the Canadian will be there, it's not clear. There will be a launch slot and a seat on the spacecraft, but it really will be a big thing for Canada.
Oh, it's giving me chills just thinking about it. Dr. Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today, and all the best in this study.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Dr. David Naylor is a physics and astronomy professor and head of the Astronomical Instrumentation Group at the University of Lethbridge. Well, moms today are often overwhelmed and stressed out and perhaps a little underappreciated as well. If you're a mom and this describes you, our next guest can offer some great advice. Amy Reno is a mom of 7, has a master's degree in clinical psychology, and together with her husband, Dr. Rob Reno, they founded Visionary Family Ministries. Amy is also the author of Not So Perfect Mom, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most. Amy, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
Nice to be here.
Okay, so first of all, Amy, can you maybe give us a brief overview of your ministry and your book?
Okay, well, our ministry started as a result many years ago. Back in 2004, we had 4 kids, and honestly, kind of struggling with this issue with my husband was a youth pastor, very active in church. We had a huge youth ministry. We had these little 4 kids of our own, and I was really yearning for my husband to be the spiritual leader at home, which really was not happening. And I was almost at the point of kind of giving up on that dream, because I just I don't necessarily recommend this policy what I did, but I kind of like scanned the landscape, right, of all the other Christian men I knew and my friends and their husbands. And I thought, no one's really doing this. So maybe what I'm hoping for just doesn't exist, or it's too pie in the sky. And then the Holy Spirit really got a hold of my husband, and he had a kind of a summer of repentance and realized that he was putting basically his spiritual opportunities ahead of his spiritual responsibilities, which were his own children, and turned his heart, which led to a massive change in our family, which led to, one domino falling. And here we are now. That was 2004. And 2022, we are been doing this ministry full time since 2011.
Wow. It's interesting because, of course, you're admitting that you played the comparison game there, which so many of us are guilty of, right? And then I think that's a common theme with maybe families of ministries, that you put so much into your community and your church, and you tend to forget about your own family. So it's interesting. So you're looking at your husband's shortcomings. As a mom, did you ever feel like you weren't doing enough either?
Oh my goodness. Well, that is what brought forth this book, Not So Perfect Mom, learning to embrace what matters most, because, I played that comparison game as well. And not just to friends, but to the world, to so many different things. I think I believed what I would now call a lie that, we as moms can have it all. Like I really thought I could, excel in my profession, excel as a youth pastor's wife, and excel at being this wonderful mom at home and doing all of these things. And gradually, as the Lord brought to death a lot of like my ability to be this woman who had it all, like it was just through health problems, through all sorts of things, I kind of had to get down to level zero and evaluate what is most important and what do I truly want to be successful at. And I realized that one of those things was, as I say in my book, a heart connected, lifelong discipleship relationship. I think it's so easy as moms to get caught up in almost like a mindset. Again, another chapter of my book is that like we're creating products instead of people. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that we have to create these super kids that are going to excel at something and get the scholarship and, have all these badges. And somehow that defines us as being great moms, when in reality, I don't think that's what any of us really want. We want our kids to be happy, and we want a lifelong relationship with them, a heart connected relationship. And I call it a discipleship relationship as well, because we want to be, God put us in their lives to have this impact on their lives, to help lead them and guide them. And that only comes through heart connection. So that's what the title, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most. It was really a journey of learning to embrace this as my primary mission as mom, and letting go of a lot of these standards that I was placing on my children and on myself.
Yeah, I think it's so typical to just want that super mom status. It looks great on paper, but who suffers? It's usually the people that are closest to us, or ourselves sometimes too, like you were mentioning with health or whatever. So why do you think so many moms feel like we're not doing enough?
I think that there's so many things that go into that. First of all, I think culturally, that is a mindset that occurs not just with moms, but with our kids too. I have one chapter is like talks about the good enough mom, like in the sense that we tend to think that we're always looking at our shortcomings and hardly looking at what we're doing well. I have a story in there where one time I was sitting at a baseball game talking to another mom, and this mom asked me, so what are your strengths? And I literally had nothing to say. And I realized it's not that I didn't have strengths. It's just that my mind was constantly focusing on my weaknesses, like, meditating on the things that I wasn't doing well, instead of really celebrating the things that I was doing, because I was doing a lot of things well, but I had this just hypercritical, which I think has been completely accentuated by social media. I wouldn't say that social media necessarily created it. I think that it is a long pattern that's existed, that we compare ourselves and measure up, especially when we enter the mom role. But social media has definitely created another layer of it that we can fall prey to and victims of. So we just don't really celebrate who we are, and the fact that God has given us this very special role, a unique role, and as a mom, and it's a gift. And He doesn't ask us to reinvent ourselves in order to do well at it.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned being good, the good enough mom. So what does that even mean, and how do we let go of that self-imposed guilt?
Good. Well, you hit a key word there, is the word guilt. And my book is written to Christian and non-Christians. So I like to kind of present the gospel in this book as well to people. But my point is, as believers, the Lord really tells us in his word that we are not to live under, right, condemnation or this feeling of guilt. And yet we tend to, as moms, what I carry this sort of bad mom shadow, because when our kids are disappointed with us or when we're disappointed with ourselves, we kind of live under this, like, well, we just didn't measure up. And often it's to unrealistic and idealistic standards. So I do want people to identify that as really a spiritual attack, in the sense that the enemy wants you feeling downtrodden, because when you feeling downtrodden, you just carry more negativity. And the reality, what we want in our homes is joy and happiness in our homes. That's like one of the best gifts that you can give your kids. So play this out as an example. Like, let's say you've had a really busy day and you are headed to takeout for dinner, and so you are just like, okay, I can't believe I'm doing this like you feel, right, all that guilt, like I didn't prepare this healthy meal, as opposed to really understanding that God has blessed you with these kids, and happy kids and a relaxed, peaceful mom is actually a better gift at that moment than fresh vegetables and stir fry, so, and it's releasing yourself and asking the Lord to give you your value, not identifying your value from the standards of the world. And what I mean by with non-Christians is just that people who don't know the Lord, I still see in a lot of women, they're still not understanding that, their self-sacrificial love to their kids is a huge gift. And we overlook that. And I want women to know that there are many children in this world that never receive a mother's love. So don't fall prey that you're not good enough when you're the one, in the trenches, stepping in and loving those kids.
I love that. What's one thing that every mom needs more of, and why?
I mentioned that in one of the first chapters in my book, is just happiness. We need happy kids. And so often I think that because we get caught up in standards and expectations, and we sometimes don't realize that those things are having a direct negative effect on the overall happiness and joy in our home. And I think that, there's this word in circles, like a deep inner joy that we all carry, but that's kind of an oxymoron, because the only joy that kids see and understand is visible joy. So when we put things on ourselves that decrease happiness, or we maybe are concerned about our kids' academic performance or our social skills, but often those are our concerns more than our kids' concerns to some extent. And I think that often we don't understand what a value happy children are until we've lost that. And when you talk to moms who are really struggling in the trenches with kids who are dealing with anxiety and depression, you begin to be aware that this value of just happiness and joy, there are high values and they're worth striving for.
Absolutely. You do write in your book that good moms raise great kids, not necessarily perfect kids. Why do you say that?
Well, because there's a chapter called Great Enough Kids. Like, are the kids great enough for you? In the sense that, sadly, a lot of us as parents are living out a lot of our own issues in our own parenting. And that's normal. That's life. And I think that God designed that for that we're still growing as human beings. But we need to just be aware that sometimes those are having like this. There's different types of moms, but let's just take example, kind of the push mom who gets her child into every activity or needs to have a certain level of excellence. When you are in that push mode, you may be missing signs that your kids are struggling under those things. And often kids are trying to reach those standards, not because they're internally driven, but they're trying to please their mom in particular. And so the question is, are your kids great enough for you? That's something that we should really be asking ourselves as moms, and understanding that, I have a story in there, where I had a daughter who was my Okay, my fourth child, second daughter, just really, really gifted in a lot of different activities. She was one of those kids you could probably throw her into anything and she would have done really well, but she was kind of a homebody. And when I would put her in something, we would, she just was miserable and was crying. And I'm like, this, how often, when do you measure and go, okay, I know she'd be really good at this, but is this really worth what we're paying? So evaluating those decisions, like, is that worth the relational cost, or is that worth the emotional cost to do this? Because it may not be.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because we have expectations on our kids, and maybe some of us want to live vicariously through them. And you have to remember that those are human beings too, and they need those good, loving relationships with you, with mom, to build resilience in themselves. And I think you write about that as well in your book.
Yes, because honestly, if you trust those gifts in God's timing, God is going to use those gifts in them when those kids are ready for it. I was really blessed to have some great teaching. Just this idea, it's called better late than early, but it's really before the age of 12, it's really too soon to say to a kid what they're gifted at or what they're not good at. And, I think that's a really helpful terminology, because I see a lot of moms today talking about their gifted kids at age 7, 8, 9, and then that kind of gets them in that mode of push, or they need to be doing this. And the reality is that really at age 12 and up, that's when you're really going to see things blossom, or you're going to learn things about your kids that you might not have thought that they were good at. So I just want to tell moms, like, don't peg your kids so soon. It's really doing them a disservice either way. Like, let them be kids, and you will see them blossom, when in the time's right. And some blossom even later than age 12, for example.
Great advice. I love that. It looks like we are about out of time, but thanks so much for being with us today, Amy. Appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Amy Reno is the author of Not So Perfect Mom, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.